and it might be relatively minor, in that I know that the shop couldn't be located in the building as it is at the moment because there was too much going on in this village. And that's an indication to me that you've got a stronger and stronger community, and we don't know that we aren't going to end up with another, outbreak of, at the moment it's the birds' time to have their pandemic, isn't it? They all have to be locked in. But it's not impossible that we may end up in other straitened circumstances as communities, as small rural communities, and I just think the shop's been a fantastic beacon for lots of villages around here. So I congratulate everyone who started it, everyone who's carried on with it, and I hope that the Parish Council does the next step, and thank you. And I have absolutely no right to ask you to do that, but please do.
Thank you, Tessa.
Is it possible to have Georgia? I must talk.
Yes.
Hi, sorry, I forgot to write my name down. My name is Georgia. I've been a resident in the village with my husband for 5 years now. I am totally for the shop. A lot of my family members are volunteers. I think it's a fantastic thing, not just for the older generation, but also for the younger generation. My husband and I both work from home from time to time, so we're not always in our cars. And actually the village shop is just so convenient for us. I suppose my consideration for the parish council would come, it's probably a little bit premature right now, and it will come potentially after when it's been given the go-ahead. But I just wanted to say that I work in public sector spending, and I'd be interested in knowing if the project goes ahead, fingers crossed it will, how it's going to be procured in regard to the tender process. So obviously we want local suppliers, and I know that goes around the room. We want local suppliers and contractors to be involved as much as possible, but I do think there needs to be an open tender process and advertised scoring criteria to allow for everybody, if it's going to be going on our council tax, to be able to see who's actually winning the bids. As we all know, we're looking for best value for money. Cheapest isn't always the best, which doesn't always come from price. This comes from a variety of different aspects, including quality of service and added value, and that means social and environmental impacts are also considered. So I just want to say, if it does go ahead, it'd be really good to have discussions on the tender process and how the contractors are actually going to be appointed. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of any of the speakers to just address you? I think you, please, I value all your comments, I value all your inputs, and however you decide to vote on this one particular issue, part of our work, you will be regarded. And please don't reconsider your position. That was an unfair comment to make. You've got lots of eyes boring down on you, but please try to disregard them. Melina.
Yeah, I would just like to ask Jamie, she talks about the possibility of teenagers working part-time in the shop. Does that mean you'd be paying teenagers while the adults are volunteers?
It's just, it was merely that in the future we don't know what it holds, and if it had the possibility of providing even work experience, that would be hugely valuable to 14, 15, 16-year-olds. You have to do work experience in year 10, if my memory serves me correctly. And the Duke of Edinburgh is widely used, particularly in rural areas. So I'm not suggesting that that's something that they've got planned for, but the Red Cow historically has employed lots of young local people, and it would be nice to think that potentially we could provide, or the team could provide another place where that might be a possibility. Everything's possible if it's here.
Yeah, but the Red Cow employs adults as well.
Yeah, but you have lots of places with a blend of paid and volunteer staff. I work at one of them now, so it's more than possible. And I don't think that retired volunteers, not all, but some retired volunteers would begrudge a young person earning pocket money on a Saturday. I'm not suggesting that's something you're going to do. It's an idea that is a possibility, I think, for the future and worth considering.
Yeah, good point, Jamie. Work experience, very important. Thank you. John.
This is to anybody really from the village shop, so it's an open house. Anybody wants to answer this one. First of all, I won't be resigning, irrespective of my position. I find that a very strange comment. Just to add into that, I don't think that's required. But my question to the village shop is for your forecast for energy bills. All of us sat in this room know that energy bills are going through the roof. It's a strange time in the world. I just want to throw that open, just how you intend to cope with energy bills over the next couple of years.
So I'd like to comment on that. So part of what I've said was so that we can potentially get contractors. So I know there's a contractor in Weston, still local, okay, not Brent Knoll or East Brent, but they offer a scheme for solar panels. So that we could look into that sort of thing.
Yeah, just to add to that, we have discussed solar panels in the past. It was certainly one of my suggestions, but I don't think that's happening. So,
And outsource heat pumps as well. There are a variety of different things we could do to help save energy and money.
okay. But if those things don't come to fruition straight away, then you have to rely on obviously electricity. Just to really say, is there a forecast over the next couple of years, and how you might tackle those high energy bills?
So I think from a committee perspective, obviously as it stands at the minute, we're profitable. So there's money currently in the pot and would continue to be, and that will continue to build. I think probably every single business is struggling to forecast exactly what energy might look like.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're alone in not having a definitive answer on that. I think the mainstay is that we're currently profitable, and we need to continue to monitor it and look at it and be agile to anything that we're needed to look at in terms of the cost rises. You know, we don't have a crystal ball the same as anyone else doesn't either. But you know, a profitable business will manage, won't they?
Can we just address your comments regarding tendering and openness, because we have our own internal processes that we will follow, and that we know we've got to show a competitive tendering situation, but Owen will just explain it.
We're working with the architect guys drawing up our plans. He's actually masterminding the design process to put it in front of potential developers, and we will obviously work with him to ensure that all the contractors that are interested in tendering are given the appropriate exposure to the project. That's very clear, and obviously somebody local is going to be better than somebody who lives 30, 40 miles away, clearly, but that doesn't necessarily preclude those people if they come in with a better tender. So certainly local tendering will be the objective, but it will be a process, as Colin said, there will be a process which we adopt as part of our overall working group on this shop for the future. So you can be reassured on that, actually. And that will be eventually published.
But will it be published before so that we can see it and look at
No,
it?
it'll be published afterwards.
And do you?
We are confident that what the way we're going to tackle the tendering process will comply fully with our statutory obligations.
And can we view that? Is that
No, it's a parish
it's
council
internal
decision.
We can share the results of it, and we can share the process that we took.
How do we know that? I mean, this is obviously going beyond the shop. But how do we know that your process is?
Well, all our meetings are recorded. You can see them
But your
online.
actual tender document, your procedures and your policy and your thresholds,
I can
is
tell
everything
you,
in
I can
there?
tell you quite conclusively that anything we do on this shop project will be fully compliant. Nothing
with
that we
what
do
though?
fully compliant with any statutory regulations that exist.
Do you know those?
At the moment, I don't.
No.
But what I'm telling you is that before we make that decision, we will ensure that we do know. So we shall check every single dot and T of the legislation that we are required to follow in order to pursue a legal and statutory process.
Well,
I can assure you that.
one of those is that it's made transparent. So
Well, transparency is great, but we still need to do that internally and then share that process with you, because we can assure you that process will be statutory compliant. So we have no doubt about that whatsoever. I can assure you that, absolutely, because we will work with both our legal advisor and our architect and designer, and both of those will be able to provide us with necessary advice, in addition to Somerset Association of Local Councils, SALC, Sedgemoor District Council, all of these people will be part of the process because they are effectively our advisors, and we will listen to all of them before we
Okay.
make any decisions.
All I would say is that if it's our money that's being spent, which it is because it's going on our council tax,
Yeah.
I would like to know or be a part of or be included in who's actually going to be building it and who's where these.
With respect, there is no necessity for that because we are totally open and we are spending public money each time we do anything in this parish council.
But if you don't know
It
the
is
thresholds,
all-
it's a bit worrying.
What is worrying?
It's a bit worrying if you don't know the thresholds for public spending.
Why would we
Why-
want to know them at this moment in time? We haven't got to that stage.
But you've just said that you do spend public money and you don't know the
We
thresholds.
rely upon public money for our funding. We cannot raise money. Sedgemoor District Council give us the money and then we use that money to improve the assets of the village
Absolutely.
and nothing else.
Absolutely.
And you can see our budget. It's the figures are on the website that Owen produces. We have total transparency, and I must admit this is the first time I've seen you, and you seem to be developing an axe which
Absolutely
is not relevant at this moment in time.
I
We
did say
haven't
it
got
wasn't
there.
relevant. Absolutely not.
We
I-
realise you've probably got experience, but a lot of people around here and in the audience have experience.
Georgia,
Apologies if it's coming across
just
that
be
way.
reassured that I will
Okay.
make sure that this council acts in a statutory and legal manner.
Okay, thank you very much.
So
Apologies
can I
if it
just
was
give you
coming
that
across
assurance?
that way because that wasn't how it was meant.
Okay?
Okay, let's close the public session now. We've gone on for half an hour and open our formal meeting. Can I just advise the public, please do not interfere in anything now that it's said. This is our meeting, okay? Please. So welcome to our meeting. Any apologies
No
for this?
apologies, we're all here.
Good, full support, well done. Declarations of interest, Bob?
Yeah, can I give my normal declaration in terms of being a Canting District Councillor, and also just a reminder that I've got a special dispensation that allows me to remain within the room and debate and vote on issues relating to the shop as a shareholder.
Jane, shareholder.
And
Colin, shareholder. Anybody else? Jane Tracy, I forgot. Tracy, you were as well.
anything else? Okay, there are no minutes because this
No
is a
minutes, this
special
is a
meeting.
special meeting.
Okay, let's move on. Item 3 is the community shop. And I think what we'll do, we'll work through the items on our agenda and then I'll invite comments, I think, from you before we move to some form of resolution or agreement. Are you happy with that? So first of all, Owen, can you give us an update on the
Yes,
consultation?
this is the report of the engagement event that was held on the 12th of November in the Parish Hall between the hours of 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. and I'm reading it out in this way so that it can be minuted as a proper record of what we've actually done and achieved. The layout of the event comprised of two key areas of presentation, one from the Parish Council and the other from the Shop Management Committee. Formats by way of a rolling PowerPoint presentation together with boards outlining the planning application together with the shop performance figures, photographic examples of the work that has been achieved to date and plans going forward. On entrance to the event, the visitors were invited to participate in the survey set up for the event and to sign the attendance register that was provided. The outcome of the visitor numbers was greater than had previously been expecting, which encouraged both the Parish Council and the Shop Management Committee. I'm just going to read out first of all the results relative to the areas of the village. So on the survey sheets that we had returned, quite a good number. Of those that returned, 42% of all the returns were from Brent Street, 10% were from Burton Row, 10% were from Manor Ride, 8% from the Willows, 5% from Battleborough Lane, 3% from Coomside, 2% from Brent Close, 2% from South Brent Close, 2% from Station Road and 2% from Wick Lane. All of the other roads listed, Wick Lane, Ham Road, Laurel Avenue, Middle Street, Orchard Grove, East Brent, Wedmore and Bakersfield, all had 1% of the vote. So that was the totality of all the locations in which the surveys came from. We had a further 20 completed today, which were sent to me via Jane. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to assess the locations of those, but all of those were in support. All 20 of those that I received today from the shop, postal box, shall we say, were in support. And the totals and the results were as follows. In support of the shop, and as you know, there was a tick box for support of object, there was a total of 121 in support, which represented 96% of support for the shop. Objection was by just four, which represented 3% of the total, and there was one undecided at 1%. So that, in my calculation, makes 100%. 96, 3 and 1. That was the spread. Okay. And just to compare with the survey that took place in 2021, when we did a household survey rather than a public consultation event, we had 157 on that occasion, and support for the shop on that occasion was 80%. So as you can see, the amount of support we gained this time was greater than we had last time on a slightly less number of survey replies. And that was because, of course, we did it over one day, whereas on the 2021 survey we did it over a period of, I think it was a couple of weeks. So they're not fair comparisons, but nevertheless it shows quite a trend. So that's where we are in terms of the village engagement report, and that would be part of any loan application that we seek to achieve, and does fulfil what they require from us if we decided to go for a loan. Okay? Is that what everybody?
Any questions, Rowan, on the consultation? Sarah?
How many residents do we have in Brent Knoll?
About 1,500.
Voting.
We've got about 1,100 or so on the register.
So we're about 10%, just over 10% roughly. 10% of the people, and that corresponds with the number of people who came to the event. I think there were 142 people who signed in. Not all of those completed the survey form. But the fact they came to the event signified that they had an interest. We will never know what they thought. So
Sarah probably wasn't on the council when we did our original consultation. Can you?
Many of these around. So
Is it worth just? Have we got these figures to remind them what our survey said then? Because it more or less corresponds with the numbers that we've got now, doesn't it?
Our survey basically outlined the proposals that we were looking at. It also demonstrated on there the effect that it would have on a council tax band D property. We took it out and then we proportioned it out. So it was the same document as we had this time. But as I said just now, we had 157 replies, which came via a postal box in the shop or by email to me. That was in July 2021. So it was about 16 months ago. A bit longer, 17 months ago. So in that time, what that shows, if you were looking at it from a statistical point of view, it would show that I think personally, and I'm not a statistician, whatever it is, I'm not one of those, it would show an increased level of support for those who took the trouble to complete the survey. And what it also shows is that the people who did not support it didn't engage this time as they did last time. That's what that comparison tells you. For whatever reason, they decided not to engage this time. Those people objected to the shop.
Okay, any other questions following on the... Yes, Marie?
The last time it was a mail drop to every house though, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Is that, were you asking a question?
Yeah, I was asking last time it was a mail
Yeah,
drop to every house. As opposed to this time you had to
yeah,
know about the event and come along
It has
to
been
the event.
condensed. Yeah.
okay. Any other questions about it? So I think we've had a successful consultation process, essentially, which is good. On the planning application that we've submitted, do you want to give a roundup on that in accordance with your notes?
Yeah, I mean, basically the planning application went in, I think it was around about the early part of October. And the planning application has now been recommended for approval. It hasn't actually been approved yet, is that right, Bob? We recommended with a couple of conditions, and they're conditions that you would expect to have on any planning application, whatever it is. And just to sort of highlight one of them, we are required to require a BAT survey of the lighting scheme. BAT lighting scheme survey we're having to provide. And our architectural designer, Paul Martin, has got on with that, and he's actually agreed with Sedgmore how we're going to deliver that. So that's one condition that we know we can successfully meet. Bob might be able to elaborate more on that, being the planning man.
Only slightly, but I would just stress I have not been involved with the planning on this at Sedgmore at all. I've been out of it, but I've seen some correspondence subsequently, which is basically that initially they were looking to have a survey done, which we would have had to have paid for to then do a lighting plan. The agent negotiated with the planning officers to say that he's done those in various other places, and what they've now agreed is as long as they meet certain criteria, we don't actually have to pay for a survey up front. He will submit a lighting plan which he believes meets the standard. They'll then check that it meets the standard, and as long as it does, they'll be happy. So that was because that was going to be about a £600 survey that was going to be required.
Yeah, it was.
So our agent has saved the parish council that money by having that further negotiation with the planning officers.
And not only will the planners be happy, but so will the bats.
Do we have mats around here? No, we do have them. I just wondered whether they're here.
No,
We're not sure.
I'm sure.
We did, I mean, as part of the original application, we did have to have a bat survey done on the toilet block to make sure there was nothing that they would be disturbing, and that survey was clear.
There was nothing there at all. So the planning application should be finally approved by this coming Friday, I'm told. We should get an approval certificate for the plans. So it's very close.
AD.
Yeah. Was everyone on that estate down the bottom on the road then done? Because that's like Blackpool of bloody illuminations now down there. So this is dark up here. It's
I think that
generally there will be
colleges and-
lighting surveys done for developments. What sometimes happens is once people move into developments, they all decide they want to
no, there's street lights. You go down there, street lights. They're bloody hell down there. Down on the estate down there.
I don't know which estate.
Bakersfield.
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 Street
Street.
Well, there's bloody street lights on it, though. There can't be house lights there. Not that bright.
I think it's on their house.
I live there. There are a couple of people who have
Oh.
LED lights, solar powered LED lights.
It looks like street lights. Sorry, then I can take that back. Right, well, they should be told to dim them down then.
We'll let you go around in the tunnel.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Then you'll deal with that.
Yeah.
Actionable.
Scrub that off.
Okay, so, oh sorry, sir.
You just said that potentially 2 conditions.
Yeah, the other one is the standard condition that we need to start building within 3 years, which is standard practice.
Yeah.
You have to start building, you have to finish it, we have to start.
Okay, you've heard the results of the consultation process. and obviously those that came on Saturday saw the video presentations both of the shop and of the parish council. We've outlined where we are with the planning application, which is almost satisfied. I think really we've got to the point really where we need to hear what your thoughts are, because you've had some good presentations this evening from members of the public, and you've been in receipt of the information that the shop has presented to us by email on their finances and their position. So what's people's feelings about it? I know I've counselled some of you and had a chat with you, but what are your feelings? AD?
I'm new to the village, but obviously I'm back working in the shop myself now, but having a community shop like that has helped me get over my late wife dying, you know, and stuff like that. And it's, you know, it's got my brain working again now. Meeting people. I've met residents and that, like, you know, oh, hello mate, and you introduce and stuff like that, and talking, chatting, like yourself, you know, Bob, everyone. But the community that they've got there is strong. And without it, the village will go down. The village, you know, it's not a village no more. It's such a community there, and a hub for people.
Okay. Any other? Yes, Amanda.
Yeah, I was going to say, I agree with what everyone said, that it's important for the community. I would just quite like to see it open a little bit more, and I was just wondering if that's going to kind of going forwards, and with a permanent building, maybe is it a lack of volunteers, or because it doesn't seem to be open a huge amount of hours. Maybe that would be something that would.
Well, I don't think we can make that a condition precedent of passing everything. You know, you've got to open more.
Yeah, no, I wasn't saying it should be. I was just kind of thinking aloud, really.
Yeah, and it's not our position as a parish council to run the shop. It is totally their responsibility to run the shop. We are not going to run that shop. All we're going to do is provide the finance and the shell to build the shell that will be the shop. That's it. It is then up to them exactly whether they make it a further success or it continues the way it is. So I do, when I drive past it, I see, sometimes I see it's closed and I think, oh, it should be open now, but that's not my problem. Yeah. Yes, Sarah.
Just a few points. So, firstly, my feeling is that a village without a shop is poorer for it. So I support those views. I also think my children, I've got 4 children, and they have actually worked doing paper rounds, and they worked at the pub. So I totally support that vision of having work experience, if not employed paid experience. I think those are the points that I have.
Thanks. Thank you. No, very valuable. Anybody else, Bob?
I was only going to say, I think, as others have said, my own view is it's important to have a shop in a village to make it more of a community. We were very lucky over the years that we had Eddie in the lane, and then we had Caroline, who did a really good job with the shop that they had. And initially, when I moved here, there were a number of shops, but those have fallen by the wayside over time. The risk was, if this doesn't go ahead, we lose any shop left in this village. I think the group that have actually managed to run this have shown over the time they've run it that they can make it work. Figures we've seen, I think, shows that it can be viable, and from the other previous shops we know that they can be well supported. I agree with the hours, but that is going to be a question of more volunteers, and that's hopefully by having something permanent, people will feel that they can get even more involved with it. Hopefully having the permanent facility gets us back the post office in some way, shape or form, and I think that would be another a big asset for us to have. And I think it's one of those things that people generally don't know what they've got until they've lost it. And I think we were lucky in one respect that, and it's a strange set of circumstances, that we lost the shop, COVID then happened, and so in a way the village looked over a precipice and suddenly thought, whoa, we're going to lose it. And suddenly we had people stepping up and doing that work. again go back a few years ago, and we had the very bad weather, we were snowed in the village. Caroline at that stage was running the shop, and she was a godsend to an awful lot of people because she could get stuff in, and people could at least get to the shop when they couldn't get out of the village. And it suddenly people appreciated what was there. And I think if we don't take the opportunity now, it was said by somebody else that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I think if this shop does go, we will not see it come back again. This is the last chance saloon as far as us keeping it. So I hope the rest of the parish council will feel that we can go it. Owen has showed us through the calculations that he's done for the budget that we know what we can afford, and I think we ought to take that risk and go for it.
Any other comments? Yes.
I mean, I only moved to the village 4 years ago, and the shop was the best thing for me because I retired from work, I'd finished jury service, and I moved house, and I came here, and it was like, oh, and no buses. And I sort of got to know the shop, and I've made so many friends, and we're sensitive as well to some of our elderly shoppers. You become aware of their other halves in hospital, and you can say, how are you doing? And they just want to chat. Sometimes they don't buy something, they just want to chat and have, a bit of company. So it's very, very important, the shop.
Thank you, Jane. Any other comments? I think trying to bring it all together, there are some of you that I've spoken to that are moving from one way or another. They're sitting on the fence, and if you sit on the fence, you get what they call a hot cross bum. So you've got to, I think tonight in particular, get off the fence one way or off the other. But in making your decision, I think you've got to look at the bigger picture in this village that you've had described to you today. It will be probably one of the most important changes we've ever made in this village, albeit a small change in some respects, but costing a lot of money. We do need this shop, it's quite evident. They are making a profitability, they are properly managed, they're resourcing their materials and goods appropriately. They just need that step up now to go to the next phase of their development, and if they can contribute to the community the way they have said they have and the way they will, then I think that we will be hard pressed to refuse this particular project. So it is for the bigger picture, the benefit of the village, notwithstanding any prejudices we may have developed over the years and run-ins we've had at various times where we've almost thrown the water out and said, you get on with it. Well, we're in a position now, I think, a much firmer position, a much better position where we can go forward. That's my summary, and my recommendation is I think that it would be nice if we could give it a unanimous vote where possible, but rest assured, if you do not support it, you will not be barraged or criticised at all, because you are all principled and prized parish councils that are prepared to give up their time for the benefit of the village.
Just say something about the conditions as well before they vote, actually, so they know what they're voting with, what conditions. So
Yeah,
if you vote for it, if you vote in favour, which there will be four conditions attached to it, because we have to put those on. One is that we get a legal, mutually agreeable lease agreement. One obviously has been met, which is the planning, so that's one ticked off the list.
Can we just add, I'm comfortable with what you're saying about the conditions, but the planning is not just that the planning is given, but it's given satisfactory plans, so there aren't onerous conditions.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't turn around and say, because you must do something which is impossible to do.
Yeah, that would be my
exactly.
caveat.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely right, absolutely. Sarah, quite right to raise that. And the biggest one of all has to be the loan approval, because we have got loan approval. It runs out on, I think it's the 21st of November, sorry. And we have got an extension, which we can fulfil the conditions to extend it, which I'm hoping we will be able to do. But, you know, we are in the realms of a government department, and they need to approve this loan before we can actually apply for it. And terms and conditions can change somewhat, so we have to be mindful of that. I don't suspect it's going to create any problems, but we have to be mindful of it as we're thinking about voting. But they are the main elements of conditions. And of course a tendering process. We get a tendering process which we've discussed earlier again on budget.
Just in regards to the tendering process, both that it's independent and I'm confident that that will be the case, and that they meet not just our budget requirements but also our timescale. I think that's really important because time's money.
Very much so.
So the resolution is that the Parish Council resolve to approve the progression of the new of the new shop and toilet block to completion and demolition of the existing toilet block, subject to 1. Satisfactory planning approval, that's without any caveats. 2. That the shop committee enter into a lease which undertakes to take on that property once it is constructed. 3. That we get full loan approval from the Public Works Loan Board. And 4. That our costs come in within our budgets that we've got available, and obviously as Sarah points, agrees our timescales that we want. I think all those 4 conditions will satisfy us being able to move this project forward. So the Parish Council resolved to approve the progression of the new shop and toilet block, 1 planning, 2 lease, 3 loan and approval, 4 cost and timescales. That is your resolution. Do I have a seconder for that resolution? Jane and Sarah. Okay, are there any amendments to that proposal? Okay, then I suggest that, can I suggest that we all indicate all those who are for the Parish Council resolving to progress this application. All those for. That's unanimous. Well done. Okay. For those who don't want to be bored by any more of the project, please feel free to retire if you wish.
Thank you very much.
Right, let's press on for that councillor. Thank you, Tessa. Nice to see you.
I can't put your door back.
There's no end to your skills. Maintenance now.
Probably need it in the House of Commons.
Yeah. well done everybody. I think to show a unanimous decision is very pleasing, because I think you all saw the, if you like, the benefits, the bigger picture of how it will contribute to the community, and we've just now got to try and deliver it within budget. So, well done. Okay, finance and payments.
There aren't any actually payments as such.
Okay.
Finance matters, the main thing is to consider the budget for the 23-24 financial period. We're going to put on the screen in a minute the sheet, which I know looked a bit complicated. It wasn't as bad as it looked, actually, to be honest, but I will go through it, I promise. But just before that, there's a couple of things I need to just talk to you about. The notes from the audit and staffing meeting we had last week, there's a couple of things on there that need just a tick from you. They're not actually required to come before council, but I still think they ought to come before the full council as an approval. Firstly, the adding of 2 signatories to the banking facility, which is Tracy and Melina, to add John and Amanda, Bob and Colin. Gives us a bit more spread of people, should we not be able to call on people at certain points. So, are you happy that Tracy and Melina are added as signatories in the first instance? Is that everybody?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And secondly, which again is not a requirement, but the nationally agreed pay review of clerks has been completed by NAUC, which is a government, well actually not government, it's a body which many clerks belong to, and they've agreed a pay increase of 4% of clerks, just over 4%. And I think that's reasonable in light of the current circumstances we find ourselves in. And, you know, it just needs, to my other thing, it needs your approval. It doesn't require it, and I think I would like it, because of the specific circumstances of what it is. It's one of the most sensitive subjects that I personally have had to talk about at these meetings. But it has to be discussed at some point during the year. And so I just need your approval, resolution to approve that in addition to, one additional item this time around is an increase in hours of 2 hours, 14 from 12. And that's primarily because of the amount of work that is going to be required between now and this time next year. It's probably going to require a lot more than that, but that's just a sort of an attempt to try and, you know, help the amount of hours that are being worked.
Can I just, without embarrassing our clerk, I think it's fair to say that Owen puts in an awful lot more hours than we contract him to do, and even with the raise in numbers, he is being paid for. And to be fair, the role of the clerk over the last few years of all clerks of all the parishes has changed. The amount of work they're having to deal with, the amount of correspondence they're having to deal with has increased an awful lot, and just the number of things they've got to comply with. I mean, we've all seen the policies that Owen has produced that we've got to work to, but that needs the work done behind it. So I think certainly I think I'm fair to say on the working group we believed it was a fair and reasonable recommendation to bring forward that there should be that increase in hours. And again, we'll be reviewing that in a year's time to see how that beds in, but we'll be happy to move that proposal.
Can I just also say one thing? In the future, you will need to appoint a new clerk at some point, and it's important, obviously, that the terms and conditions of our clerks are actually maintained. So that when you come to appoint a new clerk, you hopefully get the right person, and that's equally as important as looking after the existing one. It's looking to the future, really, to be honest. Not going anywhere just yet, but that's just for the future.
Can I propose, therefore, that well, the proposal is that we increase our clerk's salary in line with the revised pay scales, and that and combine them both, please. We resolve to approve the increasing hours of Owen from 12 to 14. I know he works probably something like 24, but 24/7 probably. But that's our proposal. Do I have a seconder for that? Melina, all those in favour? That's
Thank you very much. Okay. I've got that bit out of the way. Right. Now the budget is the next thing. And this is where my technical skills are really rather tested. I submitted this spreadsheet to Bob as well because over the years, I've always found having an extra pair of eyes on these sheets is a good idea, because Bob has come up with a couple of areas that weren't, the formula wasn't correct in, but we think we've now got something which is akin to 100%, with luck. But let me just explain first of all, the categories here, I put those on this year's one, A, B, C, D, because they're the four main categories. A is the budget we currently work with this year. B is the actual figures to the 16th of November, which is today. Forecast is what I expect us to end up with at the end of March. And the way the forecast is arranged is from what I've anticipated on the right-hand side. So where it says forecast anticipated, all those figures in there are included in that forecast. Okay, because in order to do a proper budget, we need to decide where we're going to end up, because that's often the biggest problem with budgets. So that's the format of it, and then we break it down in terms of the various groups. Now the end category D there is the proposal. That's what you're going to agree to and make the changes that you think are relevant to that. Now, the only thing on the income side, we can't put a proposal. We don't know what the income is going to be. We don't know what our precept's going to be to start with, because you haven't voted for it. So it's impossible to put a figure on there, because we don't know things like if there's any SIL funding. We don't know that. We think there might be a bit. There certainly wouldn't be any hall repayments. I very much doubt. That was just a one-off. The Nuttall grant, possibly we might get something from Nuttall. The energy, of course, is from the shop, and of course that would depend on what happens with the shop and the toilet block and all those complications. So that really is a difficult area to. We can forecast it eventually before we get to the end of the year, but it's going to take a little bit longer to get to that point. So if you look at the expenditure budget, we take out the staffing costs, because when we do our external audit, we have to separate that. And also, when it comes to setting our reserves, we don't include that as part of our expenditure for reserves. So it's much better to take that out of the mix. What you've got there is what you just approved, effectively, okay, for the forthcoming year. Now I'm going to take you down to the two main areas, council admin, which we don't have a huge amount of control over. We do have some, but not a lot. Office expenses, obviously that depends on mileage, meetings, that sort of thing, and also printing costs and postage and so forth. So there is a bit of flexibility in there. Banking charges are levied by Unity Trust at £18 a quarter. As far as I know, they're still £18 a quarter. Subscription renewals, that's things like SALC, like SLCC, like ICO, various organisations that we pay subscriptions to. We don't know what those are going to be, but we can have a reasonable guess at it. Health safety now is covered by GB Sports, so we don't really need that category in there at all, so there's nothing on there so far. Website, software, IT, that's things like, for example, the Scribe accounting system. It's to do with website management fees to David Miller and that sort of thing. Zoom subscriptions all go in there, and we're actually proposing there slightly less than the forecast, because we had a few lumps in there this year which wouldn't come necessarily next year, so I've been a bit more realistic on that. Audit fees are set really by the external auditor, so no control over that. Insurance, we have a bit of control of, but we're on a 3-year plan with them, so we probably won't get a lot of input into that. The class gratuity is really the pension, effectively. When I joined this council, we had something called a class gratuity rather than a pension. And because I've been around such a long time, I'm still actually on the gratuity scheme, which is now allowable. But if anybody joined now, they'd have to go onto a proper pension arrangement. Chairman's allowance, they're set at £100. I still put it at 100. Training fees, again, it's usually South predominantly. A few maybe other things, but South in the main. Our election reserve funds, that's in case we decide we have a vacancy and somebody forces us into an election, in which case we would have to pay the costs of Sedgemoor or the unitary authorities that would now be. Room hire fees, again, fairly consistent, fairly easy to predict, and community support is normally things like the WI providing refreshments at the APM and that sort of thing. So as you see from that, we had a budget of 5621. We're 3834 up to now. I expect we're going to end up 6473, and I pared it back a little bit there because there's one or two areas there that won't be relevant at 59. Not a lot you can change there actually. Maybe a few bits and pieces you might feel you want to have a look at, but there's not a huge amount you can change. The area for the main change comes under villager costs, because this is where the big money is, of course, because 20,000 budget, take it straight over to their forecast of 42,000. So we're £22,000 over. Our forecast is going to be £22,000 over this month, this year, on what we anticipated at the start of the year. So, general maintenance, of course, is Jason predominantly, but there are other things in there as well. SID services and supply, we've changed this around in the last week or so actually. We had the supply of the new SID originally in the special projects. We've moved it now into the SID category because we want to try and show to the public where we're actually using some of these funds. They can now see that SID is quite an important part of it. We're expecting 3146 by the end of the year. Obviously we won't be buying SIDs again next year, so I've pared that right back to £900, which is really Nichols movement services. Special projects, and I'm just thinking what special projects are. I've gone blank now. Special projects were actually.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, it was. It was the Hill Lane car park.
Yeah.
That was the major area there. Dog bin maintenance. Again, we don't control much about that. I don't know what the unitary authority would do about that contract, whether they will increase it, change the terms of it. I just don't know. So we've got to be a little bit sort of flexible on that. Footpath maintenance. This was the bit we had Steve Pinn and Steve Chick. They did some footpath work for us this year. So that's a new category actually. We haven't had that before. That's always been within that category. So we split it out. And then this is the big one here, the anticipated loan payments. Now, I've put in there 2 payments for this current year, up to March, because I was assuming that if we did go ahead on this, we could end up with the loan before the end of the financial year. So I put in there 2 payments, coming to £1,867. If we don't use those, of course, then of course that's a bonus in a way, because if we don't start paying until the beginning of April, then that won't have been expended in this year's accounts. So we will actually be £82 better off at the end of the year. And then, of course, the Play Reserve Fund, which I think was added last year, and that's a fund that eventually moves into the fixed reserves, £2,500. So by the time we've added this one in, we'll be up to 5,000 there at the end of the forthcoming year on that. So before I go on to the others, has anybody got any comments or any questions you want to ask about anything on there?
Oh, there's just one thing. When you scroll down, the bit at the top, the village green churchyard, you didn't.
No.
It's up there.
It's just on the screen.
When you read it out, you didn't.
Oh, there you go.
You went straight to general maintenance.
Village Green churchyard contract and play inspection. Well, the Village Green is obviously the Village Green. That's what we pay Jason predominantly. Churchyard contract hasn't gone up now for, well, at least 8 years. I think it's probably been the same figure, which is incredible, really. I mean, this is the one thing about our contractor. He doesn't exactly keep putting prices up. He's been the same for quite a long time. And the play inspection and maintenance, of course, that's really having jobs done. If GB Sports have to do some number typing and do the annual inspections. So it looks like a lot of figures, but hopefully it will mean something. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
Owen, on insurance, if the building is constructed during the next financial year,
Yeah.
i.e. from April, you may well have to increase your to insure the property.
Probably have to do a separate insurance for that, actually.
Yeah. Yes.
Probably need a separate insurance.
Yeah.
Because that's
will be a
quite
cost item, won't it?
It will be. I would try if I can to find out what that might add to the premium, which would help us. And of course, that may well be that the cost of that is absorbed by saving on the PWLB payments for this year. I don't know. See how it all works.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guesstimate this year because we don't know when things are going to start and finish. So you know, it is an awkward budget to do this year actually.
During the construction works, they've been sure they'll be bonus. So it's just, yeah.
We'll check all that out actually and make sure we
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
you know, we won't take anything to chance.
Yeah.
So, does anybody see that there needs to be some revision on what we're proposing for next year? This is your budget, not mine. I've written it, but your job is to say, I don't like that, I want more of this, I want less of that, or whatever. That's your...
The dog bin maintenance, how many bins is there in the village? Sorry, Bill, that's
question, actually.
So they go around, do 4 bins for 1,800 a year. Obviously that's for incineration because it's got to be incinerated nowadays, isn't it?
It's two empties a week, isn't it, actually?
So, right, yeah.
4, 5. I've counted 5.
Because there's a new one down the bottom, isn't there? So yeah, so there's quite a few in, yeah.
5 bins.
I've got a feeling that under the new unitary authority that will be a greater cost. But I don't know that. I just have a feeling it might. And of course, it may well be we need to go out to tender and get another contractor to do it because there are other people out there.
Yeah, on the dog bin thing, you know, we discussed at the last meeting about maybe putting one up in the new car park. With that, is it per bin, or is it? Yeah, so it is per bin.
That's 1,800 per bin.
No.
I mean, they charge per bin. So if we put another bin up the top, then that figure would go up. Is there any way we can do that cheaper? Could one of us do it or something?
Yeah, go ahead.
There's laws, health and safety laws of getting rid of...
We're going to put it in your garden.
Thanks.
We thought you were going to have a heap.
We could probably get a cheaper contractor.
Yeah.
Actually, to be honest.
It's a bit steep, isn't it?
What did Limshire? I think Limshire do something different, don't
They have a deal with the local kennels that does this. But partly because there was some doubt about who was filling the bid up most of the time.
Okay.
Just on Hill Lane as well, somebody approached me who was very close to that and said that it is becoming an issue and we should consider a bin up there.
So
They're concerned and they have had to pick out bags of waste in their vicinity.
So that's maybe one to look at then, isn't it?
Well, it is up if
I
that's
go
what
there
you're...
every morning. I've never seen it. Every morning.
He's probably clearing it up. He's probably clearing it up.
It's,
We've got that on our next agenda, I think we want to talk about.
we'll